Hello everyone, my name is Brendan Barr, and that noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And welcome to Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Before we begin, today is April 23rd, which is William Shakespeare's birthday, and celebrated by many fans of the Bard as basically Shakespeare Day. I do not believe it's actually called that, but I'll call it that for argument's sake. So, I'll give you a little Shakespeare to begin. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the sun of York. And all the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. Now our brows bound up with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarms changed to merry meetings. Grim visaged war has smoothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting bribing steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly in the lady's chamber, to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. Okay, that's the beginning of Richard III, as best as I could remember it. So happy birthday, William Shakespeare. Now, I have to admit, I have not checked out Ian Desher's Star Wars Shakespeare adaptations, but I did watch a clip of Ian McDermott at Star Wars Celebration reading the Shakespearean lines of the Emperor. And that was really cool. Look that up. Look up Palpatine Shakespeare on YouTube. It's worth the watch. Okay, I realized in preparing for today's podcast that I wanted to talk about a movie that connected to other films in Star Wars. Not just to the original film. Now, I beg your indulgence as we continue to do yet another film by the great Akira Kurosawa. Now, what we're going to talk about today might be his most obscure film. And a film that I hope, would be better known. And this, of course, is the 1975 Soviet film, Dersu Uzala. This is a very interesting film indeed, as it is a Russian language movie made for Mosfilm, the Soviet film studio, to be directed by Kurosawa, who I don't think he spoke Russian. Alright, the film tells the story of a Russian soldier named Arseniev, who is on a survey mission in Siberia, or thereabouts, somewhere in the eastern Soviet, somewhere in, I want to say, in the far east of Russia. Yeah, the Sikhot Allen, which I'm probably saying terribly. Sikate Ali. Sikate Ali. Which, yes, is in the far, far, far east of Russia. So Arseniev is on a survey mission where he and his men meet a strange little man named Dersu Uzala. who is an odd little fellow, who is of a particular I believe he's of a particular ethnic group known as the Goldie, though their more proper name is the Nanai. And Arsinia becomes a friend of Dersu, as Dersu leads him and his team through the wilderness. As Dersu, despite being an odd little man who speaks in broken Russian, is very wise. And as he lives in the wilderness, he knows the ways of the wilderness. And Dersu and Arsinia become friends. Eventually, Dersu comes to civilization, but discovers it's really not for him. So the movie is an interesting meditation about civilization versus nature, about how two people from completely different backgrounds can become friends, and how, over time, the ability to do what you want to do decreases with age. It's a very beautiful movie. Now, it's very interesting to note really quick that this film has not been given a proper digital remastering as most movies do. Now, I own a copy from Kino, but it is in very poor condition. Now, I am crossing my fingers that they will put this movie onto the Criterion collection. Now, all of the Kurosawa movies I own are from Criterion, save Dersu Uzala. But Dersu Uzala, even though the print is in poor condition, it is still a beautiful looking movie. As good as it can be given the image quality of the DVD. But Kurosawa is most definitely doing his very great work here. Now, one of the things that I have not mentioned about Kurosawa is his ability to generate compelling images. And how he does that is because he's the master of movement. Something is always moving on screen. So the images are never stale or static. Even when two characters are talking, there will always be something going on, visually, to make it very interesting. He doesn't do the static cut from one guy talking, cut to the other guy talking, cut back to the other guy. No, in fact, there's a great scene in here. Just for example, of Dersu and Captain Arsinia sitting around a campfire, just talking. Now, the camera is pulled back so that Arsinia and his men and Dersu are all in the shot. And they're talking. Dersu's on one side of the fire, and Arsinia's on the other. So the fire is moving. You know, it's flickering, and it's puffing, and sparks are shooting off. But behind, in the background, is a river flowing past, and the angle is such that you can see the water flowing. So not only do you have the fire moving, that's an interesting image, but you have the river moving as well. And you've got all the characters in one shot, so it creates a very interesting image that adds to their conversation. So Kurosawa is the master of such things. Now, Dersu Uzala is based on a true story, based on the book written by the real Captain Arsenyev. Vladimir Arsenyev wrote a memoir in 1923 called Dersu Uzala. And the movie went on to win the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, as well as some major awards at the 9th Moscow International Film Festival. It's really a very nice film, and definitely one that deserves, I think, to be better known. This might be Kurosawa's most obscure work, and very unfortunately came out during a low point in Kurosawa's career. In 1965, Kurosawa made the film Red Beard. There was a bit of a falling out between Kurosawa and the lead star of that film, Toshiro Mifune. And also, I don't think the film performed as well as they'd hoped. And so, Toho, the Japanese company, began to be less interested in the works of Kurosawa. For the next 5 years after that, he wasn't able to make a movie. In fact, so he makes Red Beard in 1965. His next film is Dodeskinen in 1970. Dersu Uzala is in 1975. Kagamusha in 1979, and Ron in 1985. Before Red Beard, Kurosawa was making a film at least every 2 years between 1942 and 1965. His output was incredible, but it died out because I guess the interest in Japan, particularly from Toho's studio, had shifted away from the films that Kurosawa wanted to make. And that's very unfortunate. And Kurosawa unfortunately attempted suicide. Very sad that happened. But, I think that it was at this point in his career that people outside of Japan started to take note. Okay, that's not entirely true. The truth is, his films started to get big in the United States in the late 60s. This movie, 1975, but I think that looking at the trajectory of his career, it would seem that at low point in his career, the late 60s after Red Beard, this is when his fame started to grow. Which brings us, of course, to Star Wars, and the fact that George Lucas, as a young film student, was introduced by his friend John Milius to the works of Kurosawa. Ironically, during a low point in the great Kurosawa's career. So, blessings in disguise in some way. It is still, though, extremely unfortunate that Kurosawa was at that low of a point to even try to commit suicide. That's a bit of a downer, but I'm glad that he kept going, because eventually this would lead to probably my favorite Kurosawa film, and that's Ron. in 1985, but that's a story for another day. So those are my thoughts overall on Dersu Uzala. It's a great film, and I think it's a very unique film in Kurosawa-san's distinguished career. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the comparisons to Star Wars. See you in just a moment. Hello there, this is Brennan Marr, host of Page Turners They Were Not, a Star Wars podcast. And I'm here to tell you about Anchor. Anchor is the best way to make a podcast. Why is that? Well, first off, it's free. Yes, you heard me right. Anchor is free. Anchor has all the tools you need to make a podcast from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you on various platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can make money from your podcast. And get this, with no minimum listenership. That means you can make money even if no one listens to your podcast. That, of course, is not ideal, as Anchor will allow you to spread your podcast, bring in more viewers, and you can make more money because of it. Everything you need to make a podcast is in one place on Anchor. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you, and may the force be with you. Okay, we're back. All right. Now, what I wanted to do that was a little bit different here is instead of looking for a movie to compare to Star Wars itself, I was looking for a movie to compare to other films in the Star Wars saga. The comparisons that I find in this film are strong with comparing Dersu Uzala to The Empire Strikes Back as opposed to Star Wars. Or A New Hope, I should say. So, what comparisons do I find between this movie and The Empire Strikes Back? Well, the story of a strange little man who speaks oddly and lives in the wilderness and is very wise despite his strangeness, and is actually a really short man. Well, I don't know. To me, that's Yoda all over. Yoda is a strange little man who lives in the wilderness, speaks kind of in backwards, basic, as they call it in Star Wars, backwards English, and is very wise, and is diminutive. Well, that's Dersu Uzala to a T. And definitely, at first, striking, because when Arsenian first meets Dersu, he, like the other men in his company, I think Dersu's an odd little fellow. But Arsenian grows to respect and have a deep love for this man. And I think Luke Skywalker has a similar experience of underestimating this strange little fellow that appears on Tatooine. I'm sorry, on Dagobah. I don't know why my mind went to Tatooine. This odd little fellow on Dagobah, and I think at first, Luke thinks he's just a pest. Doesn't think that much of him, only to discover that this fellow is wise beyond Luke's understanding. And I think Captain Arsenio experiences the same thing with Dersu. Now, also, there is a sequence later in the film where Arsenio and Dersu are on a kind of a snowy plain. You know, the plains of eastern Russia. And, you know, there's a big snowstorm comes and they get stuck in it. In fact, Dersu uses his know-how to build a temporary shelter out of reeds. You know, they cut down nearby reeds and make a little hut so that he and Arsenio don't die of the cold. You know, big snowstorm. So Luke Skywalker getting stuck in the snowstorms on Hoth. That's what this reminds me of. And also some of the images of the frozen plains, to me, are very much Hoth. So, you know, like, I don't know, like, it kind of reminds me a bit of Han Solo rescuing Luke and setting up that shelter on Hoth. Those are really the major comparisons that I see. Also, you have a sense of the natural world meets the industrialized world. Dersu Uzala has a bit of that in it, in the idea that Dersu eventually moves to civilization, but it's not for him. As if Kurosawa is saying, industrialization is not always a good thing. I think George Lucas is similarly arguing in the Star Wars saga of the triumph of the natural world over the impersonal mechanized world. The industrialized world can be a real danger. And I think that both of these, both the Star Wars saga and this film, Dersu Uzala, have a similar message in that regard. Now, there's one last comparison before we wrap up. There's a scene in Dersu Uzala where Dersu and Captain Arsenio are watching the sun setting and the moon rising. Or it's the sun rising and the moon setting. I'm not exactly sure. But I think it's the sun setting and the moon rising. And the sun and the moon are in the same shot. It's a beautiful shot. It's a shot from behind Arsenio and Dersu. And you've got both celestial bodies in the same image. Well, that, I think, is a comparison that we could make to the original Star Wars film. The double sunset. The binary sunset on Tatooine. An image that is later repeated in the sequel trilogy with the binary sunset of Octo and the final binary sunset on Tatooine to close the book. So that image from Dersu Uzala, I think there is a possibility that image may have inspired George Lucas. Now, to be fair, Dersu Uzala came out in 1975. Star Wars went into production in 1976. Or rather, went into principal photography. So, if George Lucas was inspired by Dersu Uzala, probably that's why I see more comparison between The Empire Strikes Back and Dersu Uzala, because maybe there wasn't enough time for George Lucas to be influenced by Dersu Uzala when he made the original Star Wars movie. Now, Arguably, as I always say, it's not necessarily that these movies directly inspired George Lucas when making Star Wars. But this is more about the comparisons that I see. But if George Lucas was inspired to make the binary sunset in Star Wars after seeing the sunset moonrise shot from Dersu Uzala, that's highly likely. It is likely because that's an image that might have inspired him when they went into principal photography. But I think in terms of story and those kind of things, I think that it is more likely that Dersu Uzala would have inspired later entries in Star Wars. Yet again, these are the comparisons that I see. Whether or not it was intentional, they were intentional. That's a different story. So, if you have not seen Dersu Uzala, I would highly recommend it. It is not on the Criterion channel to be streamed. I'm sure it can be rented on some platforms. At least I hope so. And I'm crossing my fingers that the Criterion Collection will release a copy of it, so that it can be remastered in a way that it deserves. Kurosawa is the master. And I think that the world of cinema is all the better because of it. Including that the world of Star Wars is all the better because of the master, Kurosawa. So those are my thoughts. My name is Brendan Barr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And thank you for tuning in to Fates Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.